During the worldwide response to the coronavirus, it seems patently obvious to many people that the government really cares about our health, and that this is the reason for the masks, and the social distancing, and the stay-at-home orders, and the lockdowns. But in order to discern whether or not this is really the case, just consider this. For our entire lives, the powers that be have put PFAs, atrazine, lead, and other contaminants in our drinking water, growth hormones, BPAs, phytoestrogens, and glyphosates in our food. They've plied our children with pharmaceutical-grade speed and GnRH analogs that suppress the release of sex hormones in the body. Medical doctors dole out SSRIs, mood stabilizers, and benzodiazepines within 5 minutes of meeting new patients. Medical doctors, ostensibly beholden to the Hippocratic Oath, perform unnecessary, brutal genital mutilation procedures on newborn boys that cause intense, unrelenting pain and forever alter the psyche. The medical profession, the WHO, the NIH, the CDC, all are now working in lockstep with NGOs, managed care organizations, and foundations that have special interests in pushing potentially harmful drugs, vaccines, and procedures for financial gain. These shadow entities hold patents not only on diseases themselves, but on the so-called cure for those diseases as well. One could be forgiven if he asserted that our health doesn't seem to be the primary priority here. The mainstream media have blatantly lied to us about nearly every major event in the past century. They work in concert with subversive rogue elements of the government to spread demoralizing propaganda that divide people along lines of race, class, religion, ethnicity, and sex. They have seized control of mass communication for the purposes of debauching the culture and weakening the will of the individual to resist. They pit us against each other using tyrannical divide and conquer tactics to foster a lack of trust amongst ourselves and to weaken our social bonds. How do you think this affects our psychological well-being as individuals and as a collective? The Federal Reserve and central banking ensure that every citizen in this country is forever indebted and further dependent upon the state to the extent that our economy is nothing more than an unsustainable Ponzi scheme propped up post-mortem by usury and debt. In the time since coronavirus response measures were taken, they have increased their own wealth by more than $400 billion, while the rest of us experience added financial strain and economic insecurity. It is easy to see just how unhealthy these measures are for the average citizen. For decades now, they have infiltrated the education system and have used our schools, colleges, and universities as transmission belts for radical leftist propaganda that debases the minds of our young people and trains them to be conformist consumers and empty careerists without the capacity for autonomy and critical thinking. They strive to break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and lewd obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. They tell us that debased and degenerate lifestyles are normal, natural, and healthy, while at the same time attacking the traditional family, nationalism, and heritage. They promote nihilism and materialism, which lead many to despondency and despair. Again, it doesn't seem like our health is much of a concern for these people. They promote ugliness instead of beauty, repulsiveness instead of virtuousness. They canvass our town squares, city centers, parks, and museums to spread subversive, meaningless postmodern garbage that can only laughingly be referred to as art. They mock traditional Western standards of artistic expression by substituting them for shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. How do you think this affects our health as individuals, as a nation? They have destroyed community and a sense of belonging by breaking up ethnic neighborhoods in order to promote atomized, overpriced, cookie-cutter suburban enclaves while leaving the cities to rot under corrupt mismanagement, cronyism, and nepotism. They ensure the pathetic porousness of our borders floods our nation with outsiders who do not share our values and our lifestyle. This in turn lowers the wages of our countrymen and provides cheap labor to those at the top of giant corporations who seek to exploit these invaders for profit. They rewrite American history by framing it in such a way that everything back then was hopelessly racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. The principles of the Constitution are thus dismissed as old-fashioned and out of step with this brave new modern world, and completely obsolete in the globalist world order. They have equated whiteness with evil and tell us that we must feel guilt for the perceived injustices of our ancestors. Yet they say in the same breath that race does not exist and is merely a social construct. None of this seems to be in line with rationality and reason, principles upon which good health is contingent. They have replaced religion and God with atheism and science, and they tell us that the secular saints promoting agenda-driven science are to be obeyed without question. They have worked to replace belief in the Creator with dogmatic genuflection to science and the state. They have discredited religious text as passé and obtuse when compared to the towering intellectual enlightenment of social justice and big science. During the coronavirus lockdown, abortion clinics, cannabis dispensaries, and liquor stores are considered essential services, but churches and religious services are not. This tells you much about our society's soul sickness and our general health as a people. Consider that these are the people telling you we're all in this together, and to wash your hands every 30 seconds, and to stay 6 feet apart from each other, and to not leave your home. These are the so-called experts, whom we've been told to blindly trust and follow. These are the people who have been wrong on so many counts during this manufactured crisis. These are the people who can't even follow their own recommendations to quarantine, and who contradict themselves with maddeningly confusing dictates. These are the people who tell us, after all these years, after all these decades of degrading us physically, socially, spiritually, and emotionally, that this time, we really care about your health.